Hello, I am Baal Kadmon, and I'd like to thank you for watching and or listening to this podcast. I've been really busy. I'm working on the Mesopotamia course, still plugging away at it, and I'm working actually on a course on the Mother Mary, which I've been working on for 4.5 years, and finally I got some momentum under me. So anyway, this podcast does not relate to any of that. Recently, my friend Akiva tagged me in a post discussing whether the Zohar, the primary text of the Kabbalah and Judaism, supports the concept of the Trinity. It was based on some quote that was read. Well, the answer is yes and no. The Zohar and elements of Jewish texts do say there are 3 manifestations to the Godhead, but not necessarily the Christian notion of the Trinity. In this podcast, I will, as always, give some background on the ideas, and then I will get into the passage of the Zohar that is in question. Now, the idea of the Trinity and the Christian perspective has a very complex history marked by theological debates and disputes, and people have lost their lives over this. So the development of the doctrine of the Trinity began in the early Christian era as the church sort of sought to understand and articulate the nature of Jesus and his relationship to God the Father. Early Christians grappled with this question, and because Jesus was human but also a divine being, and how could these distinct characteristics yet make him one with God the Father? In this period, various Christological views emerged, such as Arianism, adoptionism, modalism, leading to a lot of trouble for the churches that were present at that time. Now, the first breakthrough occurred at the Council of Nicaea, 325 AD, and that council was essentially convened in response to the growing controversy, particularly around a specific one, Arianism, which argued that Jesus was created by and subordinate to the Father. The Council of Nicaea was convened and formulated the Nicene Creed, which affirmed the full divinity of Jesus and established the co-eternal and consubstantial relationship between the Father and the Son. This was, of course, a significant step in the development of the doctrine of the Trinity, although the Holy Spirit was not fully fleshed out yet. And then we had the Council of Constantinople, which was around 381 AD, that was formed to address ongoing debates about the nature of Jesus and the Holy Spirit. This council expanded on the creed, the previous Nicene Creed, asserting the full divinity of the Holy Spirit and its procession from the Father. So they affirmed that the doctrine of the Trinity, that the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit are distinct persons within one Godhead, co-equal and co-eternal. And then we had the Cappadocian Fathers, that is Basil of Caesarea, Gregory of Nyssa, and Gregory of Nazianzus. These theologians were very influential. They were around the 4th century, and they made significant contributions to the development of the Trinitarian theology. They emphasized the distinction between the 3 persons of the Trinity while maintaining their unity in one divine essence. And then we had something called the Filioque controversy. And this emerged in sort of the later centuries, centered on the phrase added to the Nicene Creed in the Western Church that states, the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father and the Son. The Eastern Church, however, maintained that the Holy Spirit proceeded only from the Father. And this disagreement contributed to the schism between the Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic churches. So throughout its history, the doctrine of the Trinity has been a source of contention and debate within Christianity. However, it remains obviously a center tenet of the faith, right? I mean, emphasizing the unity and distinction between the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit in the divine Godhead is pretty much accepted now. So with that out of the way, I would like to discuss the passage in the Zohar that sparks a kind of a Trinitarian controversy within certain groups. Some Christians and sects like Jews for Jesus have noted the following passage as partial proof of the Christian Trinity, even if they outright disavow the Zohar. In the Zohar it states, "Hear, O Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai is one." These 3 are one. How can the 3 names be one? Only through the perception of faith. in the vision of the Holy Spirit and the beholding of the hidden eye alone. The mystery of the audible voice is similar to this, for though it is one, yet it consists of three elements: fire, air, and water, which have, however, become one in the mystery of the voice. Even so, it is with the mystery of the threefold divine manifestations designated by Adonai Eloheinu Adonai, three modes, which yet form one unity. This is the significance of the voice, which man produces in the act of unification, when his intent is to unify all, from the infinite Ein Sof to the end of creation. This is the daily unification, the secret of which has been revealed in the Holy Spirit. Now, I know that is sort of opaque, but this passage is a mystical interpretation of the Jewish prayer known as the Shema, which is the central prayer in the Jewish liturgy. The Shema is traditionally recited daily by observant Jews, and its core message is the declaration of the oneness of God. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one, or in Hebrew, Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. The passage refers to these threefold divine manifestations as Adonai, Eloheinu Adonai, or in English, Lord, our God, Lord. And just so you know, actually the term Adonai in Hebrew is actually spelled out as Yahweh, but it is replaced by the name Adonai out of respect. So this passage combines three different names of God in Hebrew, although technically one name is used twice. The Zohar commentary then goes on to explain that these three manifestations are three modes which yet form one unity. Now, the one thing about this passage is that the analogy of the voice, although not perfect, is used to explain this, like that says, which is the voice is made up of three elements: fire, air, and water. Even though these three elements are distinct, they come together to create one voice, right? Now, that being said, there are some, of course, similarities between the use of the audible voice analogy in that passage and the Christian concept of the Trinity. In the Christian Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are understood as three distinct persons who are united in sort of one Godhead. Similarly, the elements of fire, air, and water in the analogy of the audible voice are distinct elements that combine to create one voice. Now, here is where it gets different. The big difference here in the Kabbalistic tradition is that the divine manifestations referred to different aspects or emanations of God, just like the Sfirot being 10 emanations, right? So the three mentioned in the passage as the 10 Sfirot are also the same, are manifestations and are seen as different ways that God interacts with the world and different ways that humans can understand and experience God. These manifestations are not seen as separate beings or persons, but rather as different modes or aspects of one unified God. On the other hand, the Christian concept of the Trinity refers to three distinct persons who are united in one Godhead. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are seen as distinct persons, each with their own characteristics, but all united in one Godhead. The Trinity is often described also using the language of relationship and love, with each person in the Trinity relating to the others in some unique way. So while both the Kabbalistic idea of the divine manifestations and the Christian concept of the Trinity involve the idea of unity and diversity, right? The difference lies in how that unity is understood. In the Kabbalistic tradition, the unity is seen as a unified God with different aspects or emanations, while in the Christian tradition, the unity is seen as three distinct persons who are united in one Godhead. So upon quick glance, this difference seems subtle, but they could not be more different. I mean, even the writer of the Zohar, the very one who wrote the passage that we're talking about, was questioned about this, and this was his answer. For though it is true that no one in the land of Israel has ever asked this question, for it is just as you said, that a person should guard his words and thoughts from consideration of this, lest the foundation of his faith collapse and his thoughts bewilder him. What he is saying is that misunderstanding of the passage to mean the validation of the Trinity in Christian perspective would be considered incorrect, and thinking in that way would lead to the collapse of a person's faith, at least as far as Judaism was concerned. So although there is a similarity in wording in terms of God having three aspects, the understanding of these three differ markedly, and therefore, within a Jewish perspective, the three manifestations of God are nowhere near the three persons of God in Christianity. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I will speak to you soon. So mote it be.